Have you ever fallen asleep on the last subway or tram? If you did, you know what happens. At the last station, an attendant, or in some cases the driver, will wake you up and tell you to get out. Then you're left to figure out how to get home on your own. At times, things can get a bit more unlucky, and people are missed. In my city, those people will end up in one of the 3 large depots that the trams are returned to. These are the large maintenance halls with enough room for more than 100 trams. During the day, these depots are buzzing with employees. There are tram drivers who arrive and start on their daily shift. There's the maintenance staff who do regular checkups on the tram cars and take care of repairs. And then there's the office staff who take care of all sorts of logistics. At night, though, when the last trams for the day arrive, there's only one person left at the depot. Me. I am the lucky bastard who has to go through all the trams that arrive at the depot in the evening, and during the night. My job consists of checking for lost items, cleaning up any serious messes, and reporting damages done to the interior. Occasionally, though, I also have to handle those poor people who are forgotten at the last station. It's by no means a common thing. As I said, it's the driver's job to send everyone out before the trams are returned to the depot. There are some, though, who are lazy and can't be bothered to do the checkups. Others who are just plain assholes. My reaction to these occurrences is a mixture of pity and anger. Pity for the person who ends up at the depot, and anger for the driver who couldn't do his damn job. I'm especially pissed because I have to walk whoever ended up here to the end of the premises and send them off. It's only mildly annoying if it's some guy who fell asleep after a long day at work. The real shitfest starts if it's a drunk, or worse, a bum. I once found a guy in a tram who was so drunk he couldn't even walk anymore. After trying to lead him out of the depot for half an hour, I gave up and put him to rest in one of the trams. I sent him off in the morning with one of the first lines leaving. The thing about the bum was entirely different. He was the crazy type. The moment I tried to enter the tram, he woke up and threatened to attack me or stab me. For some time, I tried to calm him down. Finally, though, when he started a ruckus in the tram car itself, I was forced to call the cops. I ended up staying almost 2 hours longer than I should have that night. The truth is, the tram depot can be quite creepy at night. Sure, the whole thing is ablaze with lights, but it doesn't help. The place is absolutely gigantic, the size of many soccer fields. Try to imagine yourself in a giant hall, consisting of nothing but a small office area and dozens of tracks, on which trams are parked one after another for hundreds of meters. At night, when I'm there alone, the whole place is in utter solitude. Even the smallest of sounds not coming from yourself can cause a feeling of dread. What if is a common thought on my mind. I don't know what it is I'm terrified of, though. In the end, it's rare that anyone is trapped in the trams, and there's no reason for anyone to break in. I mean, you can't steal a tram, or a maintenance bay. And, of course, security cameras are surrounding the premises. What I'm trying to say is that there's no reason to be anxious. None at all. I guess I just can't help it at times. I blame my obsession with horror movies for this. Now, here's the thing. On a typical weekday, there aren't many trams running at night. From around midnight till 5 in the morning, the stations are only served once every hour, if at all. So there's not much going on at the depots. On the weekend, you've got trams coming and going at all times of the night, and you're almost never alone. On weekdays, though, things are different. The last tram of the day arrives at around 1 in the morning, and that's about it. I often have a short chat or smoke with the driver before he makes his way home. After that, I'm pretty much on my own, having to handle lights out and all that. Last Tuesday was one of those nights. That day, though, I couldn't help but feel unsettled. After the driver of the last tram had left, I was again all by myself. I don't know why or where it came from, but I had this strange feeling that someone was watching me. It was the weirdest of sensations. I looked around and let my gaze slide over all the trams, but of course there was no one there. A bit apprehensive, I entered the last tram and walked through it. There was an empty beer bottle here, some McDonald's packaging over there, and someone had forgotten a handbag. Thankfully, there was nothing damaged or broken. I threw away the trash and took the handbag to our small lost and found room. The moment I returned, I saw something. Down the line of trams, I saw a figure inside one of the cars. It looked almost as if someone was sitting inside. It was a tram further down the line, which meant it must have arrived a couple of hours ago, in the early evening. How could someone still be inside? Had I forgotten to check the tram? This made no sense. As I made my way towards it, the figure didn't move at all, almost as if it was frozen. Must be asleep, I told myself. I cursed and started walking down the line of trams. I really didn't want to deal with someone right now. I stepped past the locked doors of the dark tram cars, only for that crawling sense of dread to come back to me. For a moment, I stopped as I felt goosebumps on the back of my neck. I jerked around and looked back at where I'd come from. Nothing. I breathed a sigh of relief and was about to continue on my way when I saw that the figure ahead was gone. What the? I whispered to myself. I hastened my pace, and the moment I reached the tram, I peered inside. There was no one there. I took out my keys, unlocked the door, and entered it. Anyone in here? Hello? I walked through the thing from front to back, but found nothing. I was starting to feel a bit unnerved. I'd been strangely on edge all night. So, had I imagined things? I'd seen it so clearly, though. In the end, I shook my head and told myself I was getting tired. I should finish things up for the night and make my way home. Once I was back at the front of the depot, I heard something again. At first, I told myself my mind must be playing tricks on me still. The more I listened, though, the clearer I heard it. It sounded like shuffling feet. Suddenly, I felt very cold. I told myself again to just finish things up and ignore whatever was going on here. Somehow, though, I couldn't do that. I started to walk past the tracks and had a look down the corridors between the lines of trams. Where was that sound coming from? I'd only walked past half the tracks when I could make out something. It was a person. As I stopped, I saw a tiny old lady. She was wearing a dress and holding a handbag that was swinging back and forth with each of her steps. What was she doing here at a time like this? Was she the one I'd seen before? Did she leave the tram and make her way over here? Ma'am, excuse me, is everything alright? I called out to her. She didn't react at all. Instead, I could see that she continued to shuffle in my direction, one step at a time, almost dragging herself forward. I took a few steps in her direction when I heard her speak.
Oh my, can you help me out? Would you please come over here?
I stopped right in my tracks. That voice sounded wrong, almost like a garbled up recording.
Would you please come over here?
The voice repeated. It sounded exactly the same as before. The same weird, garbled up vocals. The same drawn out words. I felt a shiver running down my spine, and my arms were covered in goosebumps. Something was wrong here. As I stood there and looked on, she stared at me, and she repeated it a third time. I'm not sure I even saw her mouth move at all. Then, for a moment, the whole depot seemed to turn darker, as if all the lights above were dimmed out. There was a sort of lurking shadow behind the old lady. It was a strange, twisted thing, as gigantic as the lady was small. I saw it move forward and stretch in my direction. It reminded me of a bird of prey. It looked almost as if it was reaching out towards me with ghastly, dark wings and talons. I inched back a few steps, and the vision was gone again. I stood there, shaking and sweaty. I shook my head in confusion. It was just in my mind. There couldn't be something like this. At that moment, I saw something else that made me forget the strange vision from before. There was a sticky, dark liquid all below her and down the corridor. It was as if it was running down from her body. What the hell was that? Was she bleeding? Wait, hold on a moment. What is... But I broke up when she repeated the sentence once more.
Would you please come over here?
Without being able to think clearly, I ran back to the office area. What the hell was the matter with her? Was she hurt or something? I picked up the emergency phone to dial for an ambulance or help when something else hit me. Once I finished the checkup of a tram, it's locked. It's common procedure. Sure, with enough strength, you could probably push the doors open and get out. They're hydraulic, after all. You'd need a whole lot of strength to do that, though. Not even I'm able to do it. And I'm no lightweight. So how could this old lady be able to get out on her own? If she'd been in one of the trams and I'd missed her before, she'd still be locked in. If she came into the depot to get help, why was she in the back? There's no back entrance. The only way in is via the front. I'd have seen her before. This whole thing didn't add up. Would you please come over here? I heard her voice again. It was right outside the window now. I froze up when I heard the shuffling feet, and when the office door creaked. She was repeating the same sentence again and again, each time more distorted than before. There was something else resonating within it. It was almost as if a sinister laugh was underlying it. Some sort of barely hidden anticipation. Then the door was pushed open, and I saw it again. The lurking, shadowy, vulture-like shade. It forced itself through the office door into my direction, dimming out all the light in the room. Before I could even think, my flight response was triggered. I rushed towards the front door of the office area and got out of there. I didn't look back. I didn't lock up or turn off the lights. Nothing. I ran from the place for dear life. Of course, my boss tore me a new one when I came to work the next day. What was I thinking? Why didn't I lock up? What if something had happened? I didn't tell him what I'd seen. I mean, who would believe a story like that? In the daylight, everything was normal, and the place was busy with maintenance staff and drivers as usual. I finally asked him about the old lady and the trail of blood that I'd seen next to track 6. He told me there was nothing there. No liquid, nothing. And what was I even talking about? When I asked him if he checked the security footage, he shook his head. Didn't get the time to do that yet. With that, he got up and walked over to his laptop. hold on. He clicked around a few times, and then I saw him focus on the screen. I stood there and watched him. I saw his face go blank. And then, after a while, all the color vanished from it. What is... I started to ask. But before I could finish, he closed the laptop. There's nothing. Nothing at all, he said, the fear audible in his voice. After that, he told me to go home, have a few days off, and come back next week. I had hoped that there was nothing, and that I just imagined the whole thing. As I type this out, though, I know that something was there that night. And even though he said nothing, I know my boss saw it on the tapes as well. Hey everybody, hope you enjoyed today's first of 2 stories. I want to take a quick second to remind you to like, comment, and subscribe on this video. It really helps the channel grow and reach more new people. I was checking recently and saw that around half the people who watch the channel aren't yet subscribed, so I hope you'll take a quick second to hit that button if you haven't yet. Alright, now on to our next story. Terrence Brown had always been in love with ghost stories. He would scour our town in search of any and all rumors regarding the supernatural. Yet, our town was small, tiny even, and its few inhabitants shared nothing resembling even the most normal rumors or urban legends. Ghost stories or hauntings were not something the people here concerned themselves with. One day, though, as I sat with my friend Mark eating our lunch, Terrence propped himself down next to us. His face was distorted by a never-before-seen serious expression. "Have you guys heard about the wailing of Willow Way?" he asked with wide eyes, almost leaning into our faces. "The wailing of what?" I asked, before I took another bite of my sandwich. "The wailing of Willow Way," Terrence repeated in a conspiratorial whisper. "It says that on certain nights, just past 2 in the morning, you can hear strange sounds. A wailing down Willow Way. They say it's the ghost of..." "Who are they?" Mark cut in, laughing. By now, the two of us were pretty annoyed by Terrence and his silly stories, which he tried to spread every other week. "Old Larry told me about it. He said he saw the ghost himself a few weeks ago." "You know that guy's freaking crazy, right?" Mark asked, half amused, half annoyed. "Look, guys, I know he's crazy, and I know it sounds stupid, but a few nights ago, I went down there and I heard it myself. I swear it." "Stop making up stories, Terry," I mumbled, getting angry now. "Well, why don't you see for yourself? I bet you guys are too scared anyway." Before we could even retort, he jumped off his seat and raced down to another group, most likely sharing his stupid story with them as well. I knew it didn't matter. He always tried to make his stories stick, but usually was over them in a couple of days. Not so the wailing of Willow Way. For whatever reason, it took root in our small school, and soon I could hear others whispering about it, and the ghost responsible for it. I even heard that another boy, Stephen Miller, had been dared by Terrence, just as we had. Being the dumb but curious idiot everyone knew him to be, he actually set out one night, believing, of course, just like us, that it was nothing but a stupid story. He said he'd waited for almost half an hour, until, by the clock, at 2 in the morning, he could hear strange sounds coming from Willow Way. At first, he said, he thought it was just the wind, but the further he went in, the louder the wailing became, until he saw it. Down near the end of Willow Way, a headless figure stood, half hidden in the shadows, and draped in what he said to be a half-rotten sheet. The moment Stephen stood closer, the wailing started tenfold, and when the ghost finally turned in his direction, he ran. This only helped to spread Terrence's story. And even me and Mark became enthralled with it. The longer the rumor persisted, the more details became known about it. The ghost was supposedly that of a young woman. She had been murdered down Willow Way half a century ago by a deranged drifter. The man had then cut off her head before he vanished, leaving her decapitated body behind. As the story goes, the woman is still out there, wailing and searching for her missing head. How she could wail without a head? I wasn't sure. But I wasn't an expert in ghost stories. One day, driven by curiosity, I approached my mom about the rumors. "Hey Mom, have you heard about the wailing down Willow Way?" She turned, giving me a curious look. "Now, what's that about a wailing?" "It's this, story about a ghost. They say a woman was beheaded down there, and her ghost is haunting Willow Way." "Wait, what's that about a beheading? Who's telling you these stories?" "Everyone's talking about it at school. I thought you might know something about it." "Listen, Christopher, there's no such thing as ghosts, alright? Who even came up with that?" "It was Terrence," I admitted. "He said he heard it from old Larry. But Stephen Miller went down there one night and..." "Oh, for God's sake, you kids shouldn't believe anything old Larry says. Everyone knows the man's crazy." I tried to protest and tell her that Stephen had actually seen the headless ghost. But of course, she had none of it, and said it was nothing but humbug. To be honest, I wanted to believe her. Ghosts were bullshit after all, weren't they? Yet, at the same time, more and more stories were told about the wailing of Willow Way. Apparently, 2 more kids had seen the ghost by now, and their stories had spread like wildfire. Eventually, Mark and I couldn't take it anymore. We both taunted Terrence, but after all these stories, we wondered if it might be true. We set out a few days later. By now, both of us were pros at sneaking out in the middle of the night, and had done so multiple times before. When we met up, I saw Mark had brought his trusty baseball bat. I stared at him and pointed at the bat. "What'd you bring that for?" "Well, everyone says the ghost tries to steal your head. So if that bitch gets near me, I'm gonna whack her." "You're so dumb. If there's really a ghost, then there's no way you can hit her." "Why not?" "Because that's just not how ghosts are, alright?" When we checked the time, we saw it was already close to 2 in the morning, and so we quickly made our way through the town's deserted streets. After only 10 minutes, we'd arrived at the small alleyway that was known as Willow Way. Before I could so much as check the time, a quiet, almost inaudible wailing reached my ears. I slowly turned to Mark, and when our eyes met, we could both see how scared the other was. "Probably a stray," I mumbled. Mark nodded vehemently, but it didn't help one bit. We were both terrified. Step by step, we made our way down the small alley. All the while, I tried my best to listen only to the echoes of our footsteps. But with each single one, the wailing grew louder. We'd made it to the halfway point when I saw something. Ahead of us, where the moonlight was hidden by the shadow of an adjacent building, something was moving. "It's just a stray," I told myself. "It's just a stray." Those words, however, sounded empty. Nothing but lies. And then, the wailing suddenly changed into an almost scream. And a moment later, a figure turned in our direction. It was nothing but a dirty, half-rotten sheet. But then a pair of ghastly, thin arms and hands pushed themselves from within it. Then the thing wailed again, straightened its headless body before it set out in our direction. Mark and I both screamed in terror. I tried to back away, but stumbled over my own feet and crashed to the floor. As I tried to get up, My eyes were glued to the approaching figure, the approaching ghost woman of Willow Way. I shuffled on the floor, trying desperately to get up, but my body didn't seem to listen to me. My arms were dangling helplessly at my sides. My legs were too weak to function properly. No, all there seemed to be was the ghost woman of Willow Way. Finally, when I saw her hands open and close, my body relented, functioned again. I pushed myself up, turned, took a few first steps, but then I remembered Mark. Mark, let's get the hell out of here. But Mark was frozen in terror. Nothing but sheer and utter panic distorted his face, and the ghost woman was coming ever closer, step by angry step. Her hands reached out again, opening and closing, her fingers clawing through the air in anticipation, ready to tear off our heads. And then Mark screamed, a scream that might very well have been a wail, and rushed at the ghastly apparition and swung his bat. Useless, I thought. It's useless. You can't hurt a ghost. Yet, the loud thump that followed told me that you can indeed hurt a ghost, and you can indeed knock it square to the ground. Still screaming and out of it, Mark continued his enraged beatdown. By this point, a neighbor had noticed the commotion. It was an angry, middle-aged woman who stormed out into the alleyway, screaming and demanding what we were doing out in the middle of the night. "What do you kids think you're doing? You ought to be..." She broke off when she noticed Mark, the baseball bat in his hands, and the figure at his feet. Another scream cut through the air. This time, the middle-aged woman's. Before long, more and more people flooded outside, trying to figure out what was going on, and eventually the police were called. By that point, I was still out of it. Still didn't understand what was happening. How could Mark beat up a ghost? And why was everyone angry? What were the police doing here? That was, until I saw what was below the sheet. After Terrence Brown's death, things changed in our small town. We were told about the importance of not spreading silly rumors. Curfews were enacted and strictly enforced. And before long, the whole truth came out. As it turned out, old Larry had never heard a thing about Willow Way, and didn't know it even existed. There had, of course, been no crazy drifter, no murder, and no decapitated woman. There had been no ghost at all. In his desperation to get everyone to believe in his ghost stories, to make them just a tad bit more real, Terrence Brown had played the role of the ghost woman of Willow Way himself. The events of that night happened over 3 decades ago, and most people have forgotten about them. I'm an adult now, of course, and know how silly we'd all been to fall for Terrence's story. Yet, I'm writing all of this down because the other day, my son hurried into the house, asking me if I'd heard about the boy down Willow Way. When I asked him what he was talking about, he told me about the boy who'd supposedly been murdered down there. As the story went, his head was bashed in so badly, he was now out there looking for a new one. I told him it was all humbug, of course. There was no such thing as ghosts. I even told him it was likely someone trying to play a trick on him. After he'd left, however, and I sat there alone in the living room, left to reminisce about the past, I couldn't help but smile to myself. Maybe, just maybe, there really is a ghost down there now. Maybe it's the ghost of a little boy who was so in love with ghost stories, he became one himself.
Become a channel member today for early access, bonus videos, and special emojis only available to members. Check out the description below or click the join button for more info. If you'd like another way to help support the channel, please consider joining my Patreon page at patreon.com/JordanGroupHorror. As a patron, you'll get access to bonus videos and content. You'll be credited at the end of every video going forward, and if you decide to stay for 3 months, I'll name a character after you which will be featured in a Hollow's End story. Links to join the Patreon are in the description. Thanks everyone for listening. Please like, subscribe, and comment to help the channel continue to grow, and see you again next time at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hope you have a great night.